Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Mamie, and thank you, Carl, and thank you to the Southern Appalachian Highland Conservancy for bringing me today. And but I am regretful that I'm bringing up the rear of the day's events after three great speakers. It's kind of like having Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and I don't know, Beyonce warm up for the singer-songwriter that some of you have never heard of before. But it's a privilege to be here nonetheless. When I think about what this 50-year marriage between good people and good land in Tennessee and North Carolina means, I think about two of my favorite Tennessee and North Carolina women. The first of those women is the writer Wilma Dykeman, who was born in North Carolina's, in North Asheville's Beaver Dam community in 1920. And then she married a Newport, Tennessee boy named James Stokely in 1940. And they would maintain homes in both Newport and Asheville for much of the rest of Wilma's life. And when I think about that, I can't help but think that Wilma's crossing and recrossing of the French Broad River as she passed between these two states had a lot to do with her writing and publishing her book, The French Broad, in 1955. This book is an ethnography of the river. It's a call for conservation, and it's a look toward the river's role in the future of this region. A lot of people tend to assume that contemporary environmental literature, that movement began with Rachel Carson's 1965 text, Silent Spring. But here in Tennessee and North Carolina, we know that Wilma was leading the way 7 years earlier. The other woman I'm reminded of when I think about this wonderful 50-year journey is a little-known hero named Ella Mae Wiggins. Ella was born the second of 12 children in Cott County, Tennessee in 1900. And she spent her early years on a farm in Sevierville before her mother and father moved into the lumber camps like so many rural people did at the turn of the century. Her father worked as a sawyer and her mother took in laundry. But by 1929, Ella had left the mountains and settled in Gaston County, North Carolina, where I'm from. She worked 72 hours a week on the night shift in a textile mill for $9. By then, she'd given birth to 9 children, and she'd lost 4 of them. And after being abandoned by her husband, she simply did not know how she and her children would survive. And then she heard about a union. And she joined a labor strike at a local mill nearby, eventually becoming the face of the strike, which changed the course of her life as well as the course of American history. Ella recalled the music she'd grown up hearing in places like Sevierville and those lumber camps in the mountains of Tennessee, and she began writing protest songs and work songs that she would perform at union rallies. And although she would eventually be murdered by anti-union thugs, none of whom were ever charged with her murder, she would come to be known as the mother of the American protest song, and her music would later be performed and recorded by musicians like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. Under the influence of Wilma Dykeman, and in the spirit of Ella Mae Wiggins, in 2017, I published a novel about this textile strike that took Ella's life. It was one of the most difficult and the most challenging experiences of my professional and personal lives. During the 5 years that I worked on the novel, I lost my father, who was actually born in the textile mill village in Cleveland County, North Carolina, just down the mountain. And my wife and I had 2 daughters. It was actually kind of embarrassing that during the time I was working on this very private, self-indulgent thing, my wife grew and then fed 2 humans from her body. During that time also, our country lived through the 2016 election, and also the killings of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I wanted to put all of this, the pain and the glory of my own life, as well as the pain and the glory of our country, into the novel I was writing. All that to say this. Much like our nation at the time, it's all behind us now. And much like my life, my novel was a complete mess. My editor, who was himself born and raised in North Carolina by parents who spent much of their lives in Madison County, he kept asking me what I wanted the novel to feel like. And I kept telling him, I want it to feel like life. which means I was making it up as I went along. I couldn't help it. It's how I've always worked. It strikes me, especially after dinner last night, that land conservation and writing novels are remarkably similar. Every project is different, and each project has a way of leading you toward its own conclusion. And I imagine the steps are very much the same as well. First, when conserving land or when writing a novel, you have to fully understand the scope of what you're getting into. After all, this process is going to take years to complete, unless you're James Patterson and somebody's doing it for you. And y'all should do that. Y'all should think about that and then just put your name on it. You'd make a lot more money than you do now. There's no guarantee it's going to work, no matter how much time you put into it. Second, you have to understand the characters you're working with. Who are these people? What do they want? What is their role in this venture? How are they going to screw it up? How are they going to make it succeed? And then what is the story you want to tell? Why is it important that others should take time out of their lives to join you in this story? And finally, once you've finished, you have a book or a tract of land that encompasses the borders of people's lives, the merging of the past and the future of a place that is now fixed for all of eternity, or at least until your books go out of print. The work y'all do is guaranteed to last a little bit longer than mine. A couple of years ago, I was fortunate to receive the gift of time and space from the Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy when I spent a week at the birdhouse in the shadow of Big Yellow Mountain, where I stumbled my way through another novel that I am almost done stumbling through. During the mornings, I sat at the kitchen table and worked on my novel, which is coincidentally about the reappearance of a nearly extinct migratory bird, while listening to the sound of bird calls. In the evenings, I watched a family of deer play in the yard before disappearing into the brush. At night, I listened to the great heaving silence of the stars, and I swear that if you listen close enough, you can hear, if not feel, the glacial stillness of the land breathing up there, moving through its own evolution at a pace that none of us understand, an evolution that is revealed in eons instead of years. And I can tell you that it made me feel better about how long it was taking me to finish my novel. Friends, here's to good marriages between good people in good places. Here's to another 50 years of the Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy. But also, here's to perpetuity. Here's to the cast of characters you've brought together. Here's to the lives and to the stories and to the places that you've preserved forever. Thank you.